After finishing school, the young Wilders lived here in an Israeli farming community called a moshav. His early exposure to the Jewish state, its people and its worldview were to have a profound effect on him and would help shape his politics. Moshav Tomer is an oasis within barren desert land. This is where, in his 20s, Wilders lived for more than a year, fenced off from the Palestinian villages close by. This is the only photo of Wilders from that period that Van der Valk could find.
But that's definitely Geert.
Definitely.
He didn't blonde his hair.
How dark, yeah, his hair is so dark here in comparison to what it is today.
Looking up Geert Wilders and Israel on the internet, Van der Valk finds over 500,000 references. In his early political career, Wilders was a member of the VVD's foreign desk and specialized in Israel. He would visit their embassy in The Hague on numerous occasions. Such was the regularity of these visits that they aroused suspicion. According to the widely read magazine Vrij Nederland, a high-ranking officer in the Dutch Foreign Affairs Department was also concerned that Wilders was constantly asking very detailed questions regarding relations with Israel. In the article, the employee states, "Even though we couldn't prove it, it was obvious that Wilders was being informed by the Israeli embassy." Wilders makes no secret of his great affection for Israel and its people. He has a Jewish grandmother. He married a Hungarian Jewish diplomat and spent time living and working in the Holy Land in his youth. Wilders has admirers in Israel, and he's had access to some of the country's leading politicians.
Let me say a few words about that wonderful country that I had the privilege to live in for a few years, and since then visited many, many times. I love the state of Israel.
When I was a teenager, I lived some years in this beautiful country and in the city Jerusalem, and I visited Israel more times than I can count.
I have lived in Israel for a few years. It felt like home. It is our home. I will always defend Israel. Your country is the cradle of Western civilization. We call it the Judeo-Christian civilization with good reason.
The only country in the whole region that shares our values of our Western societies. In fact, is one of the foundations of our Judeo-Christian identity. A few of you may be new to Jerusalem, yet Jerusalem is not new to any of you. We all carry Jerusalem in our blood, in our genes. We all live and breathe Jerusalem. We talk Jerusalem. We dream Jerusalem, simply because the values of ancient Israel have become the values of the West. We are Israel, and Israel is in all of us.
Let us stand with Israel, because it's the front line in the battle for the survival of the West, of our Christian Judean culture and of our freedom.
And it's conflict with Islam. It's not about land. You will not solve it by changing land. It's about ideology. It's a conflict about ideology. It's a conflict between freedom and tyranny.
Very important to tell you that this so-called Middle East conflict is not, ladies and gentlemen, is not about land at all. It's a conflict about ideologies. A battle between Islam and freedom. It is not about a piece of land.
The so-called conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis is not at all a conflict about land. It's not about some inches of land in Gaza, Judea or Samaria. It's a conflict about ideology and nothing else. It's a battle between freedom and Islam. It's a battle between good and evil.
And this conflict here in the Middle East is not about land and borders, but it's about Islamic jihadism opposing Western liberty.
Israel is the canary in the coal mine. Israel is a beacon of light in a sea of Islamic darkness.
And this is Israel, the canary in the coal mine. Israel, ladies and gentlemen, is a beacon of light in an area, the Middle East, that is pitch black everywhere else.
Israel is a beacon of light, a canary in the coal mine, so to say, in an area of darkness and tyranny.
Israel is the canary in the coal mine. They are a beacon of light in an area of total darkness. Well, I think we should be in full support. The whole world actually should be in full support to the people of Israel. I mean, they are, as a matter of fact, fighting our fight. The whole world, certainly my country, the Netherlands, but the United States, any free country in the West should support Israel, because if we lose Israel, we will be next and freedom will go away.
We should stand with a country that I love so much, namely the state of Israel.
We should all support the state of Israel. Israel, Catherine, is fighting our fight. And I believe that parents in America and in Europe can sleep easily at night, because Israeli parents lay awake at night worrying about their children defending our borders. Let me tell you, if Jerusalem falls, Athens will fall, Amsterdam will fall, and America will fall as well. They are fighting our fight, so I believe we should do anything possible to support the state of Israel. And the future of the world as a symbol of freedom depends on Jerusalem. If Jerusalem falls today, Athens and Rome, Amsterdam and Paris will fall tomorrow.
The war against Israel is not a war against Israel. It's a war against the West. It's the war against us all. It's jihad. And thanks to Israeli parents who see their children go off to join the army and lie awake at night, parents in Europe and parents in America can sleep well and have pleasant dreams, unaware of the dangers.
And Israel is not just fighting for itself. Israel is fighting for the entire West. Young Israeli men and women are fighting now for our freedom, are fighting for our civilization. And the jihad against Israel is not a war against Israel. It's a war against us all. We all are Israel.